So, to reiterate, we're carrying on with alternative sci-fi films, and we are going to give the floor back over to Mr. Bill Mulligan here.
Oh, well, thank you, sir.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that. And so, okay, Flesh Gordon is what it is. This next one, so let me not go too far into the woods, but back in the day, back in this would have been 85, 86, I really got into anime. But it wasn't like it was today where anime was just a YouTube search away or go to your local Blockbuster video back when there was a whole section. You couldn't get anything. You couldn't even find Speed Racer. There was nothing available. You just heard about it, or you saw pictures or clips, somewhere. It seemed like a really cool thing. But there were folks who traded tapes, and there was a local, I think a Bible college or whatever, where some of the folks there were getting tapes sent to them from Japan. And we
Oh,
would get these marvelous things, everything from creamy lemon softcore porn to weird tentacle stuff to just some absolute beautiful things. But it was always in Japanese. So good luck watching Urusei Yatsura 2, Beautiful Dreamer, in Japanese and make any sense of it whatsoever. We were like discussing what do we think's happening. And then years later, I got to see it in English and it didn't make a whole lot more sense, but it was gorgeous. But there was one I got a hold of. I think it was dubbed, but it wouldn't really matter because there's hardly any dialogue in it. And the version I got was called Egg of an Angel, but I think it's more easily available under Angel's Egg. This is absolutely beautiful. It does not look like typical anime, where a lot of the anime of that time didn't have as much motion, but there was a lot of style. It was composed beautifully, so you could look at, it was easy to animate in the sense that the characters would stand still and while they're talking, but the composition of that shot was so good you didn't feel cheated.
hmm.
Um, this one, no, it doesn't look like anime. The color palette is so bleached out that it almost appears to be black and white. There's fantastic line detail in it. It looked like it was a nightmare to animate. It's absolutely gorgeous. You don't have the large eyes and the stereotypical anime look is nowhere to be seen in this. Shortly after watching this, I got another one, Vampire Hunter D, and I thought, wow, this is what anime really is. I don't where's this been all my life, but only to find out that they were done by the same person. So actually, most anime doesn't look like these two films. These two films are kind of unique. I just want to give credit to the artists here. Mamoru Oshii is the a director. What he's done, Lupin, Angel's Egg, obviously, or say Yatsura. He did or say Yatsura 2, Beautiful Dreamer. So apparently I was getting a crash course in this man's work as my first exposure to anime. And the only problem with that is that it's also like my exposure to science fiction was reading my dad's Ray Bradbury collections, which is great. I mean, they're wonderful. They're absolutely terrific. But if that's what you start with, good luck. Good luck finding stuff. You normally start with crap and you work your way up to classics. And I did the opposite. I started with classics, and then I'm saying, "Wow, this is science fiction." Then I'm grabbing every science fiction book off the shelf, and most of them were not Ray Bradbury. Few things are. Um, Angel's Egg. So you might say, "Bill, come on, tell me the plot." I, I'll tell you the plot. There's this planet that seems to be mostly ruins. Maybe there was a war. There's two characters. What are their names? You tell me. One's a very young girl. She has a large egg that she protects. One of them is I think a soldier. He has a gun, and he they travel together, and he wants to know what's in the egg. She doesn't really know. He wants to break it to see what's inside. Suddenly, there's whales in the sky, and people are hunting them, but I don't know if that was real. They find the girl shows him the skeleton, the fossilized skeleton of an angel. I'm giving away an awful lot here, but trust me, this is the whole plot. He breaks the egg while she's sleeping. There's nothing in it. She tries to die. She jumps into a pool of water, and as her face kisses the water, she transforms to thousands of eggs that, you know, appear and I don't know what the hell this movie's about at all. This is just absolutely gorgeous art and symbolism and metaphor and myth. We discussed it. Of course, after it's over, it's like, what did you think this was about? And we came into all kinds of ideas about religion and God. The director is no damn help whatsoever when he's been interviewed, which is as it should be. Don't get in people's way of interpreting things when they're doing a perfectly good job. Yeah, that's what it was about. Yeah, it's a metaphor, duality of man, whatever. Doesn't matter. It's absolutely stunningly gorgeous.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know why more people have not taken this film and pouring out chunks of it to make music videos and stuff, because I see a lot of folks doing that. This was a time when I think anime was really at its best. Neon Angel Evangelion, which good God, that series. And then they kept, they got to the end and everyone's like, that ending made no sense. So the director's like, okay, well, I'll make a movie. Here's the new ending. And it's like, well, that made no damn sense. And he's like, I'll go again. Nobody can figure out how to end this thing, apparently.
So good stuff, though.
It is great stuff. And the fact that it's not being spoon fed to you like you're
Yeah.
a moron makes
And
it all the better.
Angel's Egg came out. Are you remind me? So this was a year before
I
Akira. Akira was
will remind,
1988.
okay, well,
That's
this
what.
is 1985.
Wow. So Akira is what broke anime over here.
Right. And I mean, anime, a lot of good stuff has come out since then,
Oh yeah.
but I really do feel like maybe this was almost kind of a golden age
Yeah, I
there.
love that period.
Um, Let me see. Wait a minute. The Yoshitaka Amano
Yeah, that's
was
the
the
artist.
that was the artist who
Is Angel's
just
Egg from a manga or a book? Vampire Hunter D, I can't remember if that's from a book
that
or
was definitely from manga.
that was from a manga.
Um, Angel's Egg, apparently a lot of ideas that were going to be in a loop in the third film that got trashed, they decided to put into this.
Okay.
So I have a feeling that this was it was a collaboration between the two, but I don't think that it was based on a pre-existing um, work. There's one other. Hold on a second. Oshi,
Mamura Oshii.
Mamoru Oshii, is also probably best known to many people from a film that came a number of years later, but is a masterpiece as well. And that, of course, is Ghost in the Shell.
Oh yeah, I just
Um,
rewatched that recently. It's incredible.
they, you don't get much better than that.
No, it's
Someone's happy.
amazing.
Someone's happy to hear about this. Yes, Ghost in the Shell is a great film. A
Yeah.
young tail wagging friend there. The just really good stuff. And if you're, once anime became popular, westernized and everything, now we got the translated versions. We got a lot of stuff that was released. And as is true with everything, 90% of everything is crap. The I think the 80s were a great time to be collecting this stuff, despite the language barriers and everything else, because the only things that actually got to us were things that the folks trading these tapes figured was worth the effort to send across an ocean to get to us. So we weren't getting the crap. We were just getting great stuff. It was kind of like when Monty Python came out here, they started showing it on PBS, and then they started showing the goodies and some other stuff. And you got the idea that English TV was just every episode, every minute of it was fantastic. And
Right.
then you get to find out that no, much like our TV, there was some great shows and there was a lot of garbage.
Right.
Mm. But Egg of an Angel, not a film to watch if you're looking for excitement and pew 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 and everything, but if you want to see some absolutely beautiful animation that doesn't look like much anything else except a little bit of Vampire Hunter D, don't be looking for a lot of plot. Don't be looking for a lot of narrative and everything. But if you're just looking for some just gorgeous work and something to think about, watch it with your significant other or someone you're dating. Want to see if they're, is this someone worth hanging out with, or is this someone who thinks all male porn films were made for women? This is a good one to find out. So, what did you think about it, dear? And then whatever they say, just nod your head and you're like, "That's absolutely right," because this is how we do.
Most women that are attracted to me are already into anime, so
That's
it's
probably true.
taken care of. So no problem.
Frankly, it was probably a woman who recommended this to me. In fact, I'm almost 100% sure that it was. So, but this is something really really worth watching if you can find it.
It's on YouTube usually, and
Okay,
I think it has. I mean, I know it's come out on DVD. I don't know if it's come out on Blue, but Um, I
I
mean,
would love to see this in the absolute best version
yeah.
possible. It's
I mean, it
worthwhile.
definitely has a following now. It's very infamous or famous, whatever. But to be
Mhm.
honest with you, I forgot that it was Oshi and Amano. I totally
Yeah,
forgot that. Because yeah, just well, I have Ghost in the Shell on Blue, and it's just amazing. But um,
because it's very different from their other work.
yeah,
Vampire Hunter D, um, and Ghost in the Shell. These are strongly plot driven, and
yeah,
this is
very
not
much so.
plot driven. That little brief synopsis that I gave you, that's all there is.
But you know, I
There's
think
a
it's
lot of
very. I find it, and this is not in any way to subtract from it because of my sensibilities, but I find it very morose and dark.
oh, it is. Oh, wow. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm giving the best possible spin that the end of the film is when she, you know, jumps to her death and then is seemingly reincarnated as all these eggs is a very hopeful thing that she has gone to the heaven that she seems to believe in.
yeah,
And yet by releasing all these eggs contain hope. And I don't know, for all I know, he himself is not a religious person, but is very influenced by Christianity and the Bible. It's not that this is not proselytizing. He
right,
doesn't necessarily believe in this, but he is impressed with the beauty and the truths that you can find if you're, a decent person looking for that in there and not just looking for a reason to bash other people over the head and stuff. There's a lot of beauty
right,
to be found there.
sure.
And so, in its own sense, this non-Christian person has made a very Christian movie, if you choose to look at it that way, as perhaps he intended. But who knows what he intended? Because again, like a lot of smart artists, he's not going to get in the way of other people loving his work, even if they love it for the wrong reason. And who's to say it is the wrong reason? I paint something, I produce something, and it inspires someone in a way that I never imagined. Maybe that was its purpose.
Well,
Who am I to say?
death and rebirth are such archetypal
Sure,
mythical themes that I mean, if
can't
done
go
well,
wrong.
they're always going to resonate.
Right. But it's seldom been done quite as beautiful. It is sad.
Mhm.
I mean, that little girl is just about the most mournful looking thing you've ever seen in your
Yeah,
life. It's beautiful, but
the waif.
and yeah, yes. And having pretty much been surrounded by nothing but daughters and granddaughters for most of my life, that image always will resonate with me.
Mhm.
So, but yes, I strongly recommend it if anyone hasn't seen it.
Chuck, have you
Check it
seen
out.
it?
I know I've seen bits and pieces of it. I've seen people reference it, but I have
Yeah,
not seen it.
yeah. What about you, Justin?
No, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen much in the way of anime, but I haven't seen that one. No.
Yeah, I was glad when I did finally see it because I'd been hearing about it for years, but I think I did
Yeah.
see it first on YouTube. Um, and
Just want to
then
give a special Academy Award to whoever animated her hair, because that had to be, they couldn't
yeah,
they couldn't use computers back then. Someone had to draw every
yeah, every
single
little bit
strand, and
is
by God,
waving.
it's one of those things where literally almost every frame, if you blew it up and put it on a post, you'd hang it on your wall.
Oh,
Every
absolutely.
frame is beautiful.
Mm.
Absolutely, absolutely beautiful. Just
Um,
great composition, good color choices. I'm gushing here at this point. It's been a while since I actually saw this, and
I'm gonna
now I
look
want
and
to go
see
see
if
it again.
that's on Blu-ray or intending to be on Blu-ray. It might already be. So much great stuff is starting to come out again now on Blu-ray that I can't afford it. But
Yeah,
it's driving me crazy almost. But
yeah.
stuff we've been looking for years. So that was awesome. I just want to take a second, real quick, to remind everybody to like and subscribe and help us meet our 500 subscriber goal and fight the evil algorithms of YouTube. Um, so, I'm
Guys, I probably need to run off now.
oh, okay,
Like I
okay,
said, I hate to be hitting and running all the time.
it's
Hopefully, when
okay.
I get back home,
Glad you got
um,
time.
y'all take care.
All right, man.
yeah.
Justin,
Thanks,
I wish
Bill.
I were with you on the beach there. That looks
Yeah,
lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got to find some more like this. We're still in the middle of winter here, so it makes me feel a
But
bit warmer.
now that's an Australian beach, right? So, there's a great
Um,
white shark in the water just waiting for me to go jumping
yeah,
in
I
there.
think it looks like up by Cairns in northern Queensland, actually. Yeah, so there might be saltwater crocodiles as well.
Blue ringed
Ooh.
octopus,
Yeah,
jellyfish,
jellyfish,
who
what's
knows?
jellyfish? Yeah.
Must be some sea snakes, the sixth most poisonous in the world. Yeah, but it's
Lots of
awfully
sea
beautiful.
anemones.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And those
Other
birds,
than
what are
that,
those? The cassowaries, those big sort of like flamingo type birds that are actually dangerous. They're up there as well.
if I'm going to die in Australia, it's got to be from a sea crocodile. I don't want to get killed by a giant bird. No one's going to give me any street cred for that.
Uh,
Although I know the bird you're talking about, he's no one to mess with. So you guys
Well,
all
going
take care,
snorkeling up
okay?
here is good. Yep.
take
Thank
it
you,
easy.
See
Bill.
you.
Bye bye.
Talk to you soon. Cool.
Hmm.
So since Briggy isn't quite with us yet, I'm gonna go ahead and do one, and then I guess I'll hand it over to Justin,
Yeah.
depending on when she shows up. I think she texted me and said she'll be here shortly.
Yeah, there's a message. Yeah.
I have two very emotional ones tonight, so everybody get their Kleenex ready. And I'm not like being, funny. These are like severely passionately emotional films. So if that's not your thing, then don't listen. Um I'm depressing enough as it is without talking about this material. But I'll go ahead and get this one out of the way. I'm going to wait on the second one because I know it's one of Briggy's favorites too. So, but I'll go ahead and get the first one out of the way, and I'll just go ahead and give you the disclaimer. It is my number one favorite film ever made. It has been for about 17, 18 years. It came out in 2004, and it's called 2046 by Wong Kar-wai, and he wrote and directed it. He is probably my second favorite director after David Lynch. Sometimes they're kind of neck on neck. Um, Wong Kar-wai's stuff is, he's been described as the world's most romantic filmmaker, and there's no real way to argue with it after seeing his movies. His stuff is it's beautiful to look at. Most of them are shot by Christopher Doyle, who is a British expatriate who worked in Hong Kong since I guess the late 80s. And 2046 was Wong Kar-wai's seventh film, and it's the third in a little cycle of films that takes place in the same continuity. The first one that came out in the early 90s was called Days of Being Wild. So that was his second film. Days of Being Wild, in a way, was almost a remake of his first film, As Tears Go By, in that you had Andy Lau and Maggie Cheung, and kind of a weird love affair and some incestuous tones to it, and gang violence and stuff that was kind of prevalent in like John Woo and Ringo Lam at that time. So that's kind of, was his inroad, was kind of the gang and bloodshed, heroic bloodshed, subgenre some people call it. But by Shunking Express, that's really the last one where he goes there. And that's also kind of was his breakthrough in a lot of ways. But and then he did a couple of more films. And then he did In the Mood for Love, which is his most celebrated film. And In the Mood for Love, basically, there's two characters that he establishes in Days of Being Wild that appear in the other parts of this trilogy. One is named Lulu, played by Karina Lau, and one is called Cha Mawan, played by Tony Leung, who I personally regard as the second finest living actor after Tatsuya Nakadai, though he's getting old. So Tony maybe have the crown soon. Tony's only won like 3 or 4 dozen acting awards internationally, but no one in America knew who he was until Shang-Chi. But at least now they kind of do. So, and he was good in that. But the Lulu character doesn't surface again until 2046. And their arcs do not interact in Days of Being Wild. The main characters of Days of Being Wild are all either dead or written out. So these are two like kind of supporting character. Well, she's kind of a co-star. Chamawan checks into a hotel at the end of the story. And I don't know, I can't remember. I have read, but I can't remember if he intended to keep that character going on the back burner, or if it was just kind of a way of capping things, because he does these, Wong Kar-wai doesn't work with scripts. And of course, it's easy for a lot of people to insult directors who don't work with scripts. But it depends on how brilliant the director is, and it depends on how much you believe film is a cinema is a visual medium. This isn't like 3-act Todd Field whatever screenwriting by numbers. That's not what Wong Kar's movies are like. His stuff has been compared to like Bergman and Fellini and a lot of other European Antonioni. A lot of people were breaking that mold way back then. But so in the Mood for Love, Shyamalan picks up his story, over 10 years, about a little under 10 years later. And now Days of Being Wild takes place in the very early 1960s in Hong Kong. So Hong Kong was starting to boom. And as an independent entity, and it was starting to become kind of a cosmopolitan city. And a lot of westernized influences came in, like the music, and they also had a lot of the fashions that started there that kind of became popular worldwide for a while, like especially the Cheongsam dress, skin tight dresses that the women wore. I think the first time that was really popularized was when The World of Susie Wong came out in 1960. Nancy Kwan dressed that way, and she was a prostitute character, but it was a popular, sexy kind of look for all kinds of women at that period, especially like ones with a little more money. And so there's a lot of Cheongsam wearing women in these movies. The women are a lot more made up, more glamorously than Hong Kong women were, after the 70s generally in movies. So he's replicated this period very nicely. And in the Mood for Love, Chamawan has become you find out he's a writer, and he's basically like a hack genre writer, like a pulp writer, and he writes kung fu stories and wuxia stories. So that's kind of interesting considering how many great films of those genres came out of Hong Kong. And he's married. You don't really see his wife, but like a shadow. And his next door neighbor is played by Maggie Cheung. Su Li Jian is the character, and she's also married. Same thing with her husband. Their marriage is fracturing, and they just keep meeting up, and they never end up consummating. I mean, they hold hands a little bit, but I don't even think they ever full on kiss on the lips. But it's just this longing and this, things holding them back, like being married and like certain mores and of the time and place. And it's just super romantic, and it's got beautiful music, lush photography, and it was a worldwide hit and won a huge amount of awards. So 4 years later, I guess, he did 2046. So 2046 brings all these threads together. So you've got it jumps around chronologically, unlike the other two, but it's all through the 1960s. And what it does is it shows how his love for this woman, Su Li Jian, Maggie Cheung, who he could never actually attain, and then she's gone for good. I mean, she's not dead, but she's gone never to return. It's changed his personality, and he becomes a very promiscuous womanizer. And there's 5 different women he's involved with in the movie, and of course they're all played by iconic, gorgeous Hong Kong brilliant actresses besides Maggie Cheung, more all the other ones, and each of them tend to reflect a different part of his personality, because in the Mood for Love, he's a very sensitive, kind person. But what we quickly learn in 2046 is that, I mean, he's not an asshole, but he is kind of a chauvinist. I don't want to say he just hates women or is cruel to women, but he definitely utilizes them for personal pleasure, whether they're prostitutes or just promiscuous women he picks up at bars. And at first, it's hard segueing into that lifestyle because he is a writer. He's writing for a newspaper. He's not making much money, and he's eating like spam and shit like that to get by, and living in this little tiny place. And but he goes ahead and starts dressing the part and acting the part. He grows a mustache, and he's kind of Mr. Suave for a while. And that's now he narrates the entire film. There's more narration, I think, than there is dialogue from Tony Leung, and his acting it's flawless. And the again, when I say there's no script, I mean they're shooting it without a formal script, like a formal structure, finalized dialogue. I'm not saying it's shot without a plot. And so the words that Wong Kar-wai ends up putting in his mouth afterwards for the narration is just stunning. It's all very philosophical, very introspective. This guy's aware of all his own flaws, all his own faults and foibles, and kind of trying to keep his romantic nature at bay again, lest he be hurt and wounded emotionally again. So probably you're wondering, what the hell does this have to do with science fiction? Well, like I said, in the mood for love, he and his neighbor, they live in two rooms adjoining to each other, rooms 2046 and 2047 in this hotel. And then so now he's in a different city, and he comes to this place, and he notices that this place he has a room. Well, first he encounters a woman at a party at the beginning of his womanizing, and it's the same Lulu character from Days of Being Wild. So you follow up on her. Now she's played by Karina Lau, who in real life ended up marrying Tony Leung. And she's kind of a cabaret dancer and may also be a sex worker. It's a little ambiguous. Now she calls herself Mimi, and she kind of pretends not to know him, and he's intrigued by her. He ends up not sleeping with her, but soon afterwards, she has an abusive boyfriend, and she kills herself in room 2046, and there's blood all over the bed. That's all we really see of the aftermath. So he asks the guy who owns the hotel, a Chinese man, if I can rent it, and he's like, no, it's got to be cleaned up. And Chow understands after what's happened, and he says and the guy says, tell you what, why don't you rent 2047, and then when 2046 is ready, you can move right in next door. He's like, I might do that, or I might just and he's like, why are you particularly into that room? And as typical with this movie, his character is very cryptic. He's very close to the vest with his emotions. And he's like, you could say it's the number. And the guy said, does it have a meaning for you? He goes, no, I was just joking. But of course he's not. And Chuck, are you already crying? I'm just kidding. I was like, I know it's sad, but I'm getting there. It's going to be sadder. So soon, the hotel owner's daughter, played by Faye Wong, who is a Chinese singer, Hong Kong singer, who also kind of broke out in Wong Kar-wai's Chungking Express. She's like a young pixie-ish, energetic kind of chick, and her style is not the Cheong Sam. She kind of is the more of the heading into the late 60s, where she's wearing a lot of tight slacks and the colorful kind of shirts and a little different kind of hairstyle. And she talks to herself a lot. So it actually took me a few viewings to realize why she talks to herself a lot. The character Chow doesn't understand that either. She's in love with a Japanese man played by Takashi Kaneshiro, who also was in some other Wong Kar-wai movies. I guess probably one of his more well-known movies over here was House of Flying Daggers a few years later with Andy Lau. He's one of the few big Japanese actors who worked solely in Hong Kong. And So that relationship is not working out. The father hates the Japanese because of what the Japanese did to the Chinese during World War II. Um, so they break up, and she tries to write him letters surreptitiously, but the father keeps finding out. And Chow kind of helps her out and mails him a few times, and he starts to get to know her. And he hears her talking to herself, and I mean, it seems as though she's talking to herself, like saying aloud things she's thinking about saying to the boyfriend that she's losing, or she might be a nut, but really, um, it's not definitively answered. But my theory, which is strongly supported by what comes next, is that she's a writer also, and she's reciting dialogue out loud between her character, which I have done millions of times when no one's looking or listening. Well, hopefully they weren't. But anyway, so in this case, someone was listening. So soon he finds out that she is a writer, and he thinks she's a far better writer than he is. And so he starts working on some more pulp stuff for money, to make a little more money on the side. And she starts helping him, becoming his ghostwriter and assistant plotter. And it's very realistic the way they collaborate artistically. That's very resonant with me. And they do these wild wuxia movies, wuxia novels with these crazy characters with crazy names. And so they start drifting into science fiction. And he had started writing one called 2046 right before he and her began working together. So obviously that number has meaning to him. So this movie's not in linear order of the plot wise. So I'm kind of telling it in linear order. It's not how it's presented. The big movie begins with 2046. So it begins as a science fiction film. So incredible CGI. It's basically the guy narrating it is the Takashi Kaneshiro, not the character, the boyfriend, but the fictionalized analog. So he does another thing that I also do in my stories, many people do, is these people he meets throughout the story, he fictionalizes them into characters. So the actors play both the real people and the characters, and they show the stories intermittently throughout. In the beginning, the character's named Tak. So Tak, the Japanese guy, he's basically like, 2046 is like a place. It's a year. So it's like in the year 2046, but it's also a place. Some writers say, like Wikipedia says, he travels through time to get to 2046, but that's not accurate if you actually, watch the movie and really pay attention. But you know how Wikipedia can be. Basically it's like in Alphaville, how Lemmy Caution takes the railways, which, all Godard is doing is filming the highway at night with neon. But it takes him to this other place that Flash Gordon and all these other heroes went to and were killed by this supervillain. And so whereas Alphaville is at another dimension, another planet, and he keeps it in that area where he's not just driving down the road to Alphaville, he's going into another realm of Alphaville. And you could argue Marienbad is a similar kind of place, perhaps, kind of,
Yeah.
Very bizarre, weird plane. But in this one, 2046 is that. So there's a city, and it's linked worldwide to these rail systems, which, in real life now, China has the greatest rail system in the world by far. They have the easiest transportation of any country on earth. I know that's going to possibly trigger some people watching who are to the right of me, but it's a fact. I'm not proselytizing. It's just their standard of living is higher than ours, all politics aside. But anyway, this was made in 2004, so definitely they were heading in that kind of direction. And everything's fluorescent and rainbow colors, and it's just beautiful to look at. And so he's taking this rail. Tak is taking this rail to 2046. So it's a place you go to recover memories, and he's trying to heal from a woman he loved. And so again, it's almost like going to a place, a time, and also a place within yourself. So 2046 has all those levels, plus it was the door of an hotel that he was in love with, and then a door to a hotel where he meets these women later. So there's like 5 or 6 layers to what the title means. Um, and this character Tack, he's like, nobody ever comes back from 2046 except me. And he says that in the beginning. And then you don't pick up that story until much later. So when you get into the period where he's picking up that story line, right before he starts writing with the Faye Wong character, I forgot her character's name. He has picked up 2046, the story, and what he's done is, while he's writing it, he does the same thing. Like the station attendant for the rail system is the same actor who plays the guy who owns the hotel that he's staying at in 2047, and the room 2047, and he's the father of Faye Wong, the writer. And then Faye Wong, he has cast as a they call her cabin attendant. She's an android, or just described in some write-ups of this film, a gynoid, and a female android. And so she looks incredible. I mean, all the future stuff is not just the CGI stuff, but the actual production design sets where they are, the lighting, the costumes, the hairstyles are just absolutely unbelievable. The android woman walks around and her shoes glow like top to bottom, neon back and forth with a light inside of them on both feet while she's walking like the whole time. I don't know how they got that effect, but she's very attendant to his needs, being a cabin attendant. And so Tack begins to fall in love with her, and so he's cast Faye and the Japanese boyfriend as these characters. But he says in the narration, I felt this was about her boyfriend, but the more I wrote the story, the more I realized that it's about me, not the Japanese guy. And he has a lot of these kind of philosophical observations through, romantic observations. And in this case, he says, love can creep up on you unawares. And, feelings can creep up on you unawares. And so through writing this story, he realizes he's falling in love with her. And the more they writing together, so they begin writing a riff on this called 2047, which is really his basic plot structure, but she's writing a lot of details in too. And that's something they collaborate on together. And they start spending a lot of time together. And, it's platonic, but, he obviously this is the other side of him. This is not the womanizer guy. This is like the side of him that fell in love with Su Lijin in the last film he was in, and the side of him that's creative, like he wrote with her and he's writing with this girl. So they go between, during this section of the film, they go between their interactions and the story parallels. And there's another android gynoid introduced, played by Karina Lau, who played Lulu or Mimi and Tony Leung's real life wife. And she's a bit more ostentatious looking. And one thing that starts to happen over time is the kind of the aphorism that runs through the story. I don't know if it's a real Asian one or if it was made up for this movie by him. But they said long ago in ancient times, if people had a secret, they would climb a mountain and they would dig a hole, they find a tree, they would cut a hole in the tree and they would whisper the secret into the tree and cover it with mud. And there it would remain forever, unheard by other human ears. And so not only that's something that the character Tack is saying to in the beginning, and he tells it to the android that he's falling in love with, and who is the analog of the woman Chow is falling in love with. And her response is hard to read, and she starts doing this like she's going to be the hole in the tree so he can tell her the secret. And then she starts playing with him and moving her hand around. And so she has a sense of some kind of human playfulness. But he finally does speak into the hole and he says, I want you to leave with me. That's his secret, but he's telling her, like when we get to where we're going on this train, come with me, and she never answers. And from then on, they've been kind of intimate, but not sexual, because there's a section they go through that's subarctic, because this thing is kind of like Snowpiercer, years before Snowpiercer. It kind of rings most of the world. And so they went through a subarctic section, and people have to like cuddle up, and the only the person was the android. So they, of course, he enjoyed that, and you couldn't tell really what her reaction was. She seemed to enjoy it. And then they make out a little bit, but then she becomes more and more distant, and he starts thinking, okay, what's the deal? And the train station attendant says, hey, these androids, this is the thing, they do these trips around the world for years, and what happens is their motors and sensors and circuits begin to wear down, and so they start processing information really slowly, like a digital delay. And he says they can feel emotions, but it doesn't express when they feel it. Like they could feel sadness, and it might take them 3 days for tears to come out. So he's trying to figure out, does she love me? Is it the delayed reaction? And then he's finally like, she doesn't love me. I've decided that's it. Also realistic, because those are things you tell yourself when you're not sure what things are going with your significant other, if they won't tell you. And so the other android, played by Karina Lau, she also starts kind of winding down and acting really loopy. And finally, he gives up on her. The TAC character gives up on her. And you see him like waiting for her reaction. And they keep showing her in these luminous shots with the train going by, just beautifully shot colors. It's just amazing photography. And it says like, an hour later, and then it says 10 hours later, 100 hours later, 1,000 hours later, and she's still just looking out the window, and she starts to cry a little bit. And so then by this time you realize that, if it's not already apparent, I mean, Chow is at this turning point. Like, obviously he's in love with his co-writer. And then he says, while he's envisioning the 1,000 hours later, he said, I'd finally realized, I meaning me, the character TAC, but me, Chow, because like he said, it's really about me. I realized that it's not that her just reactions are delayed. It's not that she doesn't love me. It's that she's still in love with someone else. So what Chow realizes through writing the story is that the young lady is still in love with the Japanese boyfriend who she's been separated from. And she leaves soon after, and that's the last time he sees her. And in the intervention, in between these two romances, there's a long section where he's with Zhang Ziyi, who plays a prostitute, and she's just gorgeous, and she falls in love with him, but he like uses, he's just like, it's just sex. And he really is kind of, he's always honest with her. He doesn't lead her on, but he is, not good to her, I mean, and he tells her, it's never going to be anything but sex. And that's the part of his heart that's ruined from, falling in love with the old Su Lijin. But when he meets Fei Wong, this co-writer, that's when his heart kind of melts. And so she goes away. So now 3 of these women have gone away. One died, and the other 2 have gone away, never to return. And you've come full circle to another scene in the beginning with another character named Su Lijin, but it's not. It just she has the same name, so you get into this doppelganger thing like David Lynch, which is the same thing with these androids and the human analogs. So The other Su Li-jin is played by Gong Li, another stunning and brilliantly talented Hong Kong actress, and she is also known as the Black Spider. She's like a kind of a criminal. She's mainly a gambler, and there's tons of Hong Kong movies, crime movies made about gambling, a lot more than American ones, and so she's really good at taking people for their what they're worth, and they become involved kind of romantically, and then we find out that took place right after In the Mood for Love. When he first moves to Singapore, he meets her. So, and that's when he has like the full mustache for the first time, and then later he has a smaller one, so you'd have to reassemble the movie, including the vignettes into a chronological order. But in the beginning of the movie, it's just very much they're talking. You sense a tension, and he's like, "Why don't you come with me when I move back to Hong Kong?" And she's like, "We'll play cards," and he loses. And then you think that might be the end of it, but then after we've gone through the whole next two affairs, the next 20-25 minutes plays through with the whole thing with him and the new Su Li-jin, and it doesn't work out. We know how it ends, and what has happened is there are these periods where he went out on the town drinking. He drinks a lot. Where he went on the town drinking with the Zhang Ji character, and they're in the cab going home, and those scenes are shot in black and white. And he's falling asleep, and he is holding her hand, which of course she's already like, well, he doesn't want to be involved with me, so but these are mirrors of the black and white scenes in the cab from In the Mood for Love, where he's with Maggie Cheung, where in his mind, this is the fantasy moment, because that was their moment. That's like the closest they came to making out. And so when we get to the end of the other Su Li-jin story, he's back in the cab, and we're back in black and white, and this image is still haunting him. And so when Su Li-jin, Gong Li, walks away from him, he does the long narration, and it's very moody, and he's basically, I guess, she walks away into the night, and he's basically saying that well, all the little aphorisms he's saying throughout the movie, which some are cliches, but nothing lasts forever, and there's no way of knowing any of this, and so even though the end of the movie takes place right after In the Mood for Love, therefore at the beginning chronologically, it's what ends the movie. So that's the arc of the movie, and those are the science fiction elements, and I tried to spend more time on those and their real life analogs than on the Black Spider and Zhang Ji parts, because those are a whole other thing where you're more into purely the romance. But the part of him as a science fiction writer, I find incredibly accurate. It's how I write. It's how a lot of people I know write, especially ones who fictionalize their love affairs in their stories, and use fantasy settings to make it more removed from reality and allegorical. So I would say it's a great film, and it's a great romance film, and it's a great art film, but it is a great science fiction film, because I think it shows a seed of where certain kinds of fantasy writing come from, from your own lived experiences, and your world building off of the world that you live in. That's like a mirror. So have either of y'all seen 2046?
No, haven't seen it.
Have you seen it?
No, I've heard of I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask you, have you seen any Wong Kar-wai?
No.
Okay.
I've heard of In the Mood for Love, and I've seen scenes from it, and it looks exquisite.
Yeah.
And I've heard of Chungking Express, but other than that, I know.
2046 did not. I mean, it did win some awards, but I mean, it didn't get the international acclaim as either of those two movies you just mentioned. It's kind of the DVD went out of, I had the DVD when it came out. It went out of print fast. It took forever to come out on Blu-ray. But Criterion finally put out the World of Wong Kar-wai, so they consolidated. So his first 7 films, well, 7 of his first 8. The Ashes of Time is not in there for rights reasons, but other of his first 8 films, the other 7, are in there, and a couple of them, like 2046, is the first time they've ever been on Blu-ray. So I've had the set for a little while now, and but today was the first day I sat and watched it all the way through, and that was heavy. So I still love it, and so that's my unconventional choice.
Sorry.
Hi, you've been watching Deep Images. I'm Henry Covert, your host. This is Briggy Williams and C.F. Roberts, 2 of our most amazing panelists. And we've been talking about an incredible series here. We do these series sessions every so often. We break them into individual episodes. So we wanted to kind of give you a segue and let you know what you've just watched and what you can look forward to. So just want to remind you, thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe, and support the channel any way you can. You guys have anything to say?
Yeah, like, subscribe, come back, see us. We don't bite. Type, type, type.
Do you like that? We like that. Let me tell you something. Leave some comments.
Hell yeah.
Leave something in chat. If you like us, talk to us. If you don't like us, talk to us. We want to hear from you.
All right. Y'all have a good evening. Thanks for watching.